I'll never forget this night. The pizza place I worked at was about to close, and I was getting ready to go home when the phone rang. I was working the counter alone that night, so I had to take the calls. When I picked up, there was complete silence. Hung up. About a minute later, the phone rang again. I answered, and once again, silence. I was about to hang up when I finally heard a weak, cold voice on the other end. It was an old woman. She said she wanted a regular pie delivered. I stayed polite on the phone, but inside I was screaming. I just wanted to go home and end my shift. I called out to my boss that somebody had requested a delivery. He told me I had to go. At first I was annoyed, but then I realized another delivery meant another tip, and the older customers usually tipped the best. I wrote down the address and told her it would be there soon, but before I finished speaking, she had already hung up. I thought it was rude, but I ignored it and yelled to the chef that I needed one regular. My boss told me to just go straight home after the delivery since the place would be closed by then. A little before 10 o'clock I got in my car, entered the address into my GPS, and started driving. The house was 7 miles away, on the quieter side of town. When I arrived, I saw it was a small one-story house on a very quiet, empty block. I grabbed the pizza, walked up to the door and rang the bell. No lights were on inside the house. I hoped she hadn't given me the wrong address. I rang again, still no answer. I was about to give up when I turned my head and saw someone standing at the window. Froze. First I backed away, freaked out. Then I forced myself to look closer. It was an old woman, probably in her late 70s, just staring at me with a blank expression. I called out through the glass that I had her pizza. She didn't react. I repeated myself louder. That's when a huge smile spread across her face. Not a friendly, genuine smile, but one that sent chills crawling up my spine. I can still picture that exact expression to this day. Had enough. I hurried back to my car, set the pizza on the passenger seat, and pulled out my phone to text my boss about what had just happened. I started the engine, ready to get the hell out of there. But when I glanced to my right, my blood ran cold. The old woman was now standing outside, directly at my passenger window, wearing the same unsettling smile. I slammed the car into drive and floored it down the street without looking back. My boss never made me do another late-night delivery again. This next part happened 4 years ago when I was still in high school. It was the end of my shift, and I was told to do one last delivery. I got into my car, a beat-up 1999 Camry that was perfect for delivering pizzas. I entered the address into my phone's GPS and started driving. Since I live upstate, all deliveries were long drives through the country. I remember the sun was just starting to set, so it must have been around 7 o'clock. After about 15 minutes of driving down forested dirt roads, my GPS finally told me I had arrived. The house was an old wooden cottage by a lake, completely isolated in the middle of nowhere. The grass on the lawn was so overgrown it nearly reached my knees. I was used to strange houses in the country, so at first I didn't think much of it. I took the pizza to the front door, except there was no door. I knocked loudly against the wood. Within 10 seconds I heard the sound of footsteps on the other side, moving across wood toward where I stood. They stopped at the door. That's when I started to feel uneasy. I had the impression I was being watched. I noticed a peephole in the door and, through it, someone watching me. "It's the pizza guy," I called. A low, harsh voice answered from the other side of the door and told me to bring the pizza out back. I didn't like the idea of going around back. Something felt off. "Are you sure, sir?" called out. He didn't reply. The footsteps stayed right next to the door, like he was still watching me. I almost walked back to my car, but I didn't want trouble with my boss. The last time I refused to follow instructions I got attitude. So reluctantly I trudged through the uncut grass and around the small house toward the back. There was a shed and a little patio back there. On the patio was a table with 4 chairs. In one chair, facing away from me, I saw the head of someone sitting. I walked over and said, "Excuse me," but the person didn't move an inch. "Excuse me," I said louder. Then someone behind me called, "Over here." I turned and saw a man poking his head out from the corner of the house, looking at me with a crazed smile. "Come over here. I want to show you something," he said. Freaked out, I spun around and ran, back the way I'd come, in the opposite direction toward my car, still holding the pizza. I jumped in, started it, and drove away as fast as I could. On the way back to the pizzeria, I pulled over to the side of the road and called the police. When they checked the property later, they found no sign anyone had been living in that house for a long time. I quit my delivery job a few days later. I still don't know what would have happened if I'd gone up to that man. To this day I wish I had turned my head just once to see who, or what, was sitting in that patio chair. Another night, during a different shift, I was doing late-night deliveries. I lived in the Poconos then, very rural, and often drove long stretches surrounded only by trees. That night it was dark and foggy. I took a shortcut to town I'd driven many times before. Suddenly I slammed on the brakes. Someone had jumped out of the bushes and into the road. The sickening bump and thump against the front of my car confirmed I'd hit them. I put my hand to my forehead and cursed myself. I couldn't believe it. I got out and checked. A man in a black hoodie lay motionless by my tire. Panic. Why was he in the middle of nowhere? Why did he jump in front of my car? Then I heard a scream, a human scream for help, coming from the woods to my left. I looked at the man I'd hit. He was still lying there, unmoving. I must have only been gone a minute, but for some stupid reason I thought it was okay to leave him and run toward the scream. I moved toward the sound, hoping to hear another cry, but there was only silence and the normal noises of the night. "Where are you?" he yelled. Somewhere in the dark I heard footsteps crushing the leaves. I turned and could just make out a silhouette hiding behind a tree opposite me. I ran as fast as I could back to my car, glancing over my shoulder the whole way to make sure I wasn't being followed. When I jumped back into the driver's seat, the man I'd hit was gone. I didn't stick around to wonder where he went. My heart was racing the whole drive, but I still finished the delivery. At the house, a middle-aged woman answered the door. After she paid, I noticed her eyes shift to something behind me. She said oddly, "They let you guys have delivery partners now?" I was confused. "What do you mean?" "You've got someone with you in your car," she replied. My stomach dropped. I turned and saw somebody sitting in the back seat of my car. I used the woman's phone to call the cops. They arrived shortly after, but the person in my back seat had already disappeared. The scariest part, the police found a blood-stained knife on the floor where the man had been hiding. That memory still haunts me every day. It's painfully scary to imagine how things could have turned out if I hadn't made that delivery.